Like because I really want to be a rapper. That's like my goal, which will never be achieved because I'm like a white girl, like with no rap flow at all. But I like do my own interpretation of rap, which I would never call rap, but it's just me going like, stuff like that.
Charli says she isn't quite able to sell her interpretation of rap very well 12 years ago, with an almost nonsensical collection of sounds existing as her idea of a flow. Rapping and Charli XCX aren't usually two things that go hand in hand for a lot of casual listeners, and that does make perfect sense. Charli has been in the pop music sphere for well over 10 years now, starting her career in underground raves and transitioning into dark synth-heavy pop music by the time her first album came out. 2024 has arguably been Charli's biggest year to date, with the pop culture behemoth that has been BRAT seemingly taking over the whole world. It's one of the best albums of the year in my opinion, existing as a self-reflective, tragic, vulnerable portrait of a pop star. It's also endlessly fun, providing some of the best bangers of this year and Charli's entire career. Prior to 2024, I'd argue that outside of Charli's core fan base, if you asked most casual music listeners what they know of Charli XCX, it would either be her feature on Iggy Azalea's Fancy or maybe Boom Clap, which isn't necessarily an issue. I enjoy both of these songs, but it does make sense considering they both released a few years before her most significant artistic metamorphosis in 2016 with her Vroom Vroom EP. And whilst Charli has displayed glimpses of her quote-unquote rapping ability on earlier projects, take Cloud Aura from True Romance for example.
No, I'ma fuck your shitter, set fire to your picker, and drive it supersonic, crash and burn it with my sister. No, I don't need a mister, cancel the babysitter.
Vroom Vroom was, I believe, the start of a much stronger embrace and willingness of what a lot of people would just call rapping. Some may hesitate to call it rap because it's coming from Charli XCX, but a lot of the time it just is that. Before starting this endeavor, it's important to place it within the context of who and what is and can be considered a rapper in 2024. Of course, I'm not proposing that Charli XCX operates in the same spaces as Jay-Z or Kendrick Lamar. When I say Charli XCX can be considered a rapper, that is true because of the era we live in. Since the early to mid 2010s, it's basically been a prerequisite for newer rappers coming out to also have some sort of singing ability, or at the bare minimum, know how to create catchy, melodic structures either intertwined or alongside their rapping. That might not be ideal for the quote-unquote rap purist, but if you look at who have been the biggest rappers of the last 10 years, it stands true. It's the reason why, for example, Travis Scott is one of the most commercially successful rappers of his generation. He might even be the best example of this shift, considering that it's kind of tacitly accepted that the main draw for Travis Scott's music isn't necessarily his bars. When people say the name Travis Scott, the sounds inherently associated with his name is the moody, melodic, auto-tune heavy soundscapes that he's known for. Think about some of his biggest ever songs like Goosebumps, Antidote, Butterfly Effect, Fiend. All of them have Travis singing significantly, sometimes even more so than rapping. Yet we would never hesitate to call Travis Scott a rapper, and rightfully so. You can be multiple things at once. That is the field I genuinely believe Charli XCX operates in, and I'm not being sarcastic. A genre-bending artist known for her use of autotune and experimental song structures, incorporating a significant amount of stylistic choices that we would once again usually just call rapping. So let's go back to the Vroom Vroom EP in 2016, the real blossoming of this style for her. The title track, Vroom Vroom, is undoubtedly flat out just her rapping.
Bitches on the beaches looking super cute and freaky. All my friends are princesses, we keep it whipped and creamy. Ice cubes on our tongues because we like to keep it freezy.
In that distinctive, laid-back, very English, of course, way, Vroom Vroom is cold, cavernous and minimal until we get that overly sweet, almost pastiche-like chorus for that extreme contrast before we're whiplashed back into her rapping about cars. Speaking of that style as well, it is the fact that it is that style that I feel comfortable calling her a rapper when she chooses to do so. It feels authentic, regardless of whether you think it works or not, love it or hate it. I do believe it comes from a place of sincerity. It would be a whole different story, of course, if she was capitalizing on or just copying the style of maybe other successful British rappers. most of which share a very different upbringing in life to her, of course. But thankfully that's not the case. Trophy shares a similar structure to Vroom Vroom, I'd argue going even harder with a more organic transition from rapping to singing. It's actually more expressive in its rap portions than almost anything else on the EP, which I believe is a good preview for what would be her next project. Number One Angel, which dropped in 2017, has her amalgamating even more subgenres and styles, everything from 2000s electropop and of course some rap sprinkled in for good measure. Baby Girl is the best example of this for me. The bass-heavy, summery instrumental initially doesn't prepare you for Charli's extremely laid-back, lackadaisical flow at the start, and she uses that unexpected flow to her advantage. You'd usually hear a flow like that on, say, a song like Vroom Vroom, for example, which is essentially a party flexing style of song. This time she uses it for this fairy tale of sexual fantasy, which audiences would tend to associate with something maybe breathier and more melodic. But then we get what we expect on the hook, with Charli pivoting to an exaggerated, suggestive version of her own singing style. And not to sound crude, but the build-up from the rap section to the overtly sexual chorus does feel genuinely climactic, and I don't think that's an accident. It also points to an artist that is intentional with stylistic choices. The contrast in styles on the same song is reflected in the instrumental and lyrics themselves. It's not just her rapping for the sake of it. Pop 2, which would release a few months later, has more experimental song structures, hence the title, but two of the best examples of Charli's version of rap music. I Got It, featuring Pablo Vittar, Cupcake, and Brooke Candy, is a bad bitch posse cut. Every single verse is a stripped back, hard-hitting, flat-out rap verse. Charli's verse is intentionally simple, with some bars literally consisting of just one or two words. Brooke Candy kills the opening. I've been assured by a close friend of mine who is Portuguese that Pablo Vittar is also killing it. And Cupcake, one of the most underrated rappers out there, goes unnecessarily crazy on her verse whilst the beat just melts around her. And for all the overt rapping ability on the track, I can't help but be transfixed by the insanely repetitive hook consisting of three simple words: I got it. The hook stays the same whilst the instrumental metamorphs around her, and to me this genuinely has the exact same appeal as a lot of Playboi Carti's music. Fundamentally, what is the difference between this hook and a hook like Lean For Real, for example? Like genuinely, if you take away the perceptions of both artists, what is the difference in approaches to their hooks here? It's really not much, and they scratch the same itch in my brain. I do know that Charli has said before that she is a fan of Carti's music, and that collab would be a dream for me. There are also online some amazing Charli XCX Playboi Carti mashups too to check out. I actually kind of think they're basically two sides of the same coin. In my head, Carti is the hip-hop Charli XCX, and Charli XCX is the pop Playboi Carti, but that's a whole separate video and rabbit hole to go down. Pop 2 ends with track 10. Track 10 is a Charli XCX cult classic. Almost every version of Charli is present on track 10. It's a dreamlike odyssey starting and ending on complete opposite ends of the sonic spectrum. The first verse is where we have Charli opting for a more melodic but speedier approach to rapping. Fitting considering she is literally describing running away from her own vulnerability. As previously mentioned, these choices aren't just stylistic but actively contribute to the concept of whatever song or project she's working on. 2018, the interim year between Pop 2 and her next album, we get a few loose singles that continue to display some of her bars. 5 in the Morning is 100% a flat-out trap song. It's not even debatable. If I showed you these lyrics on paper, you'd be forgiven for thinking it was written by Quavo or 21 Savage. I'm not joking. She is absolutely fucking skating on this beat. I Can See You Talk Got a Big Mouth, Would You Stick Around for the Come Down is unironically hard. She also says she's 365, 6 years prior to that song coming out. It's just the swagger and confidence that the song is drenched in that makes it so addictive. I do really wish this was marketed a lot more by her label at the time because it's top tier in her catalogue. And even with this style, she stays true to her MO by weaving in that subtle vulnerability that she's known for. Wait for Me Heaven, I'm Here Till I Die, laced into a turn-up song like this, and with BRAT in hindsight is particularly noteworthy. 2018 also saw the release of Focus, in similar vein to I Got It, with super stripped back simple rap lyrics, which makes sense considering its dark party song atmosphere it's clearly going for. 2019, Charli releases her self-titled album, opening with Next Level Charli, a fitting title when you look at what she would do on this album and moving forward. Charli opens her self-titled album with her once again rapping about cars, crashing, and partying. But with an urgency and transfixing flow that she's maybe only previously displayed on track 10. And once again, we get this more rapid flow version of her when she's hell-bent on continuing the metaphorical party indefinitely or until death, whilst running away from her problems. It's just a ridiculously attention-grabbing way to open up an album. Charli is probably her most eclectic album in terms of range of styles, exemplified by its wide range of guest artists, for example, including Christine and the Queens, Haim, Troye Sivan, and Sky Ferreira. Click with Kim Petras and Tommy Cash, another song ostensibly about partying and driving cars fast and fucking with her clique, is one of the most aggressive displays of her rapping. Bars like "When I Wanna Go Pop, I'll Pop, I Got Them Hits" appears to be prophetic in hindsight. The hook, like a lot of the hooks on this album, is infectiously catchy in stark contrast to the universe-melting, speaker-crushing last 30 seconds of the song in a true what the fuck is going on moment. We also get the posse cut sequel to I Got It with Shake It, with the exact same lineup of Cupcake, Pablo Vittar, and Brooke Candy, and the addition of Big Frida. Similarly to I Got It, it's centered on a super simple, repetitive refrain whilst the instrumental continues to transform around it. The difference this time is that Charli doesn't even have a verse, rather setting up a platform for her features to once again go crazy. Cupcake is the standout performer on here for me, particularly this Vince Staples bar.
Get on top of that dick, shake it like turbulence. You haven't heard from him since. I'm a different expense, and that is pussy me staples like I'm fucking no Vince.
2099 ends the album, and like the opening, Next Level Charli chooses to bookend the album with even more rapping. As opposed to the opener, however, she opts for the more laid-back, reserved flow on the hook, not unlike the first verse on Baby Girl. You may have guessed it, but once again, she's rapping about cars. A good rule of thumb for Charli songs is basically, if there's cars involved, she's most likely gonna be rapping. The next project was not one long in the works like Charli for obvious reasons. How I'm Feeling Now came into existence over the course of roughly 6 weeks during the first portion of lockdowns in 2020 around the world. You'd be forgiven in thinking this album was a long time coming, considering how detailed and varied these songs are, but it's more of a lightning in a bottle, palpable set of emotions. I lived with this album throughout lockdown and will always remain firmly attached to that period in my life. Even though it's so different than Charli, no surprises, it opens with her spitting bars once again on Pink Diamond.
I just wanna go real hard, lip gloss on and I'm looking like a star. Got a tiny bag but I've got a big heart on the video, jack, cute skirt and a bra.
With an even more accentuated accent, one could even call it bratty, Pink Diamond can be an overwhelming, discombobulating experience, kind of like that first period of lockdowns, to be honest. In real life, Could the Club Even Handle Us is one of a number of references to life retreating to the online world during this period of time, as Charli repeats over and over that she wants to go real hard. The rest of the album is as unpredictable and eclectic as its opening, but there's one standout song for me that remains my favorite ever Charli XCX song. Party For You is so many things. It's 80s synth pop nostalgia, it's futuristic, emotional, vulnerable, transcendent, and still has some rap sprinkled in, even briefly. Considering it's the only song on the album that had been in the works for a number of years, it makes sense that it goes to so many different places. There's so much to say about this song, I'd maybe even like to do a video on it at some point, but it does follow the trend of Charli previously sprinkling in rapping moments in sprawling songs. It's during the moments of attempting to mask insecurities through fun, energy, and partying. We get another brief rapping interlude with an exaggerated staccato flow as she describes attempting to seduce the invitee to the titular party. When you first hear this song, it's almost impossible to predict the avenue she's going to go down with each verse or even line. It's so fluid and transformative, giving us glimpses of basically all of her talents on a single track. It's confident, vulnerable, catchy, emotional, and communicated through beautifully stitched together vignettes of genres and approaches. Anthems uses rapping to a slightly different effect, describing most overtly the day-to-day mundanity of lockdown in a list-style format. That overwhelming input of online information and emotional anxiety so much of us shared during that time is communicated through that rapid fire section. Crash is of course Charli's most overtly quote-unquote traditional pop album since her earlier music, and that aspect of it was heavily leaned into by Charli during its promotional run, making references to selling out and having this swagger of, fine, I'll do the basic pop girl stuff, but I'll still do it better. I still love this album. I got to see it perform live, in fact, which was amazing. Naturally, this intentional, almost sarcastic pivot towards a less challenging pop music means that the rapping version of Charli is nowhere to be seen here, which is fine by me. Like I've previously mentioned, she's so skilled in a number of arenas, and Crash remains an amazing album. So we come to 2024, the year of BRAT, the year that Charli XCX's public profile and position in the music world has maybe never been more significant, and I'm all here for it. As a stan, I think she should be the biggest pop artist in the world, but that's just me. But when it comes to the music and concept of BRAT, it lends itself to a particular approach. I think of BRAT as both an embrace and deconstruction of Charli's party persona, existing in the seemingly contradictory notions of loving the party life whilst knowing you might be using it to hide your insecurities. It's the reason I think BRAT is the most vulnerable moment of her career, which I think is an amazing sleight of hand considering all the singles we got leading up to it pointed to a full-on party album. Songs like Von Dutch and Club Classics are completely recontextualized when they're surrounded by the likes of I Might Say Something Stupid or I Think About It All the Time. I might be on a slight tangent because of how much I love this album, but as I was saying, the nature of the album lends itself to certain styles. And that bratty, laid-back, nonchalant, confident aspect of the album works perfectly well with her rapping style. So once again, we open up an album with Charli rapping. And the bars on 360, I genuinely think are some of her most well-written ever. That city sewer sluts the vibe internationally recognized, I set the tone, it's my design. That's fucking bars. It's even more impressive considering that basically all of the verses on the song are delivered in an extremely monotone fashion, as if she doesn't care, once again fitting that BRAT concept. Club Classics continues the Charli tradition of rapping faster and faster once she starts partying, with super simple, stripped back lyrics literally describing the music she wants to listen to. Saying that you want to turn up to yourself at the club is the kind of ridiculous confidence we usually associate with famous rappers. The next most significant moment of Charli's rapping is on Everything Is Romantic, my favorite song on BRAT. And I love the fact that once again, what she does on the song is completely unexpected. It opens with the most luscious strings you've ever heard, and I'm expecting to have my heart ripped out by an emotional auto-tuned ballad. Instead, we get Charli's impressionist depiction of Italian romance delivered to us in lines that could each be their own postcard messages.
Bad tattoos on leather tan skin, Jesus Christ on a plastic sign.
Is actually the hardest opening bars to a song this year, and I don't care. It does such a perfect job at being specific enough that it's personal and emotionally resonant, whilst at the same time leaving just enough room to project your own memories, nostalgia, and feelings onto it. Charli loves doing this thing where the same simple lyrics are injected with new energy by introducing a batshit insane beat, which is exactly what happens about 50 seconds in.
Bad tattoos on leather tan skin. Jesus Christ on a plastic sign. All in love again and again. Winding roads through manual drive.
The lyrics remain exactly the same, but the entire energy is shifted with the introduction of the new instrumental, before declaring over and over and over again that everything is romantic. Lemons on the trees and on the ground, sandals on the stirrups of the scooters, neon orange drinks on the beach, 4 generations make up a family. That's the simple, evocative imagery I love about the lyrics in this song. The reason the raps are so matter-of-fact and simple is that we as the audience can fill the space in between with our own memories. We go full Playboy Carti, jump out the house, with the closing minute of the song where she simply repeats "fall in love again and again" around 50 times. And on the surface, that sounds lazy and uninspired, but to me, this is one of the emotional highs of the album, attempting to communicate those ineffable feelings. Other rapping highlights on the album include Rewind, another example of Charli accentuating her accent and augmenting her voice whilst rapping about deep-seated insecurities in an almost uncanny valley-style dance song. Girl So Confusing follows the rapper tradition of dropping diss songs, with bars about an unnamed competitor being jealous and wanting to be like Charli. However, in unusual fashion, that diss gets resolved very soon with the release of the Lord remix, who was the subject of the original song, where all of their insecurities and miscommunications are resolved in real time on the track. And even Lord is rapping. Charli gets Lord to rap, or basically just talk at this point. BRAT closes with 365, which is a remix of the opening track. Coming after the emotionally raw I Think About It All the Time, Charli goes full party girl rapper to suppress those all too human emotions. She raps rapidly about being a brat, listening to her own music, and existing in a never-ending party existence. It's an approach and reason for this style that she has used many times before, but maybe never this explicitly.
365 party girl. Should we do a little key? Should we have a little line? Wanna go real wild when I'm in that?
It also serves to perfectly wrap up the album and set up this never-ending loop of dealing with the polar opposites of being the confident pop star and the vulnerable woman wanting a quote-unquote normal life. In true Brat fashion, we get a deluxe version of the album a few days later that included an unreleased, previously played song, Spring Breakers.
Crazy girl shit, gonna go spring breakers. Every time I make it so outrageous, always gonna listen to people playing safer.
Conceptually, a song about Charli's disdain for award shows, particularly the Grammys it seems, as she embodies a violent, disorderly version of herself, hell-bent on just fucking shit up at the award shows. The song isn't that deep and doesn't completely fit the concept of Brat, which is maybe why it's a deluxe track, but the bars and flows go fucking crazy. She even manages thematically relevant references to both Vroom Vroom and Boom Clap. And that's where we are right now. Charli is currently on top of the world and Brat Summer is coming to a close. She's the it girl of pop music right now, rightfully so, as she's been the pioneer for around a decade now. And that's thanks to her amalgamation of styles and willingness to experiment. The main point of this video is that perhaps the most underappreciated and frequently utilized skill at her disposal is her rapping, genuinely. It's such a specific style, completely her own when she does it. It can be hard to sound authentic when doing this kind of thing, but because of the conceptual approaches and flat-out confidence she displays when she does this, it never comes off as anything else but genuine. Charli XCX is sometimes a rapper. Not in the traditional sense, not even that she would call herself one, I doubt it, but she has said, like in the very first clip of this video, that she wanted to be a rapper at some point. And I happen to think that her version, her interpretation of rap, when she chooses to do so, is unlike anything else in popular music.